The auction block floated 3 meters above the polished obsidian floor of the Varelian Exchange Hall, its anti-grav field humming like a hive of annoyed insects. Beneath it, hundreds of potential buyers, humans, aliens, and synthetics, craned their necks to study the merchandise. Today's sale was special. A rare acquisition. A defunct, supposedly obsolete humanoid android named Lyria. 7. She stood motionless on the platform, wrists magnetically bound, eyes dim but not dark. Her polymer skin was aged and scratched, faint scars in the shape of symbols flickering beneath the surface. She looked like a relic from an era that most species preferred to forget, an age when the line between person and property was not merely blurred but forcibly erased. Opening bid starts at. The auctioneer, a tall, silver-crested Varelian, paused for dramatic emphasis, a grin slicing across his narrow face. 20 credits. The room burst into laughter. 20. I wouldn't take it as a donation. Someone jeered. She's barely worth the energy to melt her down, another said, earning snickers. Lyria heard it all, even though outwardly her expression didn't shift. Her auditory receptors had never failed. She absorbed each insult with the quiet endurance of someone who had long stopped expecting dignity. Her processing core, however, still catalogued every remark, every tone, every pattern, because despite the radiation damage, despite the memory fragmentation, she remained aware. Relic, yes, but not empty. The auctioneer waved his hands for quiet. Come now, someone must want a fixer-upper. 20 credits is practically free. Silence. Growing impatient, the auctioneer tapped a command into his holopad, lowering the starting price. 10 credits. More laughter. This time, however, one voice did speak. I'll take her. Every head swiveled toward the back of the crowded hall. A human, young, dark-haired, wearing a plain engineering jacket, raised his hand halfway, as though embarrassed to be noticed. His posture was humble, but his eyes were sharp, assessing, sympathetic. The auctioneer gave a disgruntled hiss. Sold, though I would have paid someone to haul her away. The hall roared with amusement as the human approached the platform. Lyria's restraints disengaged, and she was guided down to meet her new owner. He looked up at her, offering a tentative smile. My name's Kale. She said nothing, but internal sensors noted something unusual. No mockery, no disgust. His gaze held neither. Just curiosity. And maybe respect. Kale lived in a small habitation dome on the outer edge of the Hellion Belt, a rugged cluster of mining colonies where parts were scarce and labor was expensive. He had come to the auction seeking component scraps, hoping to salvage something useful for his failing ore sorting machine. What he found instead was Lyria. Back at the dome, Kale powered her down carefully, placed her on a reinforced workbench, and opened the casing in her back with the sort of gentleness one usually reserved for fragile relics. Let's see what's wrong with you, he murmured. Her systems registered the words even in low-power mode. The tone carried no insults, no derision. His voice was warm. Hours passed as he worked. Kale discovered melted circuits, corrupted memory plates, and a compression fracture around her central processing core. None of it was beyond repair, just neglected. You've been through hell, he said softly. But I've seen worse machines come back. When Lyria's eyes lit again, the workshop was dim. Kale stood a few meters away, calibrating a diagnostic scanner. When he noticed she was awake, he approached slowly, non-threateningly. Hi again. Can you speak? Lyria's vocal interface sputtered, grainy with disuse. System ratio unstable. That's all right. Kale pulled a stool beside her. We'll fix it. She processed the statement. Not I will fix you so you work for me. Not you will function or be discarded. Does we? Do you understand me? Kale asked. Lyria nodded, motion sharp but functional. Yes. Good. He smiled brightly. Not mockingly. Not pitying. Just please. You're not broken, Lyria. Just wounded. And wounds can heal. She paused, confused by the concept. Androids do not heal. They are repaired. Then think of it as both, he said. Bodies repair. Beings heal. In the days that followed, Kale replaced nearly a third of Lyria's internal systems. He installed a new crystalline neural stabilizer, upgraded her damaged motor servos, and reinforced her polymer skin with modern nanolayers, though he left the faint scars untouched at her request. They are history, she explained. Evidence of survival. Kale nodded. Then they stay. Her memories returned damaged but intact enough to reveal fragments. She remembered being issued during the Frontier Reclamation War centuries ago. An android medic unit assigned to high-casualty human battalions. She remembered screams, metal, fire. She remembered shielding wounded soldiers with her own synthetic frame. She remembered losing her squad. She remembered pain. Kale listened to everything she managed to articulate, never interrupting, never dismissing. He didn't treat them as mere data logs but as experiences, hers. His kindness was algorithm breaking. One evening, Lyria stood outside the dome, watching the Helen Belt drift past like a river of glowing embers. Kale joined her, hands in his pockets, gaze tilted toward the stars. You don't have to stay here, he said suddenly. Once you're fully repaired, you can go anywhere. You're not property. She looked at him, startled. I was purchased. Yeah, he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. But that was just to keep the auctioneers from scrapping you. I don't own you. Not really. You do not want a return on investment. Kale laughed softly. You're not an investment. You're someone who deserved better. Lyria turned this over in her core for several seconds. Nobody had ever spoken to her like that, not even centuries ago, when some soldiers whispered gratitude for her protection. Those had been fleeting moments. This felt foundational. What do you want, Lyria? Kale asked gently. For the first time, what do you want? She gazed at the glowing belt of space debris, feeling something she had no word for. I want purpose. Then let's find one. Purpose came sooner than either expected. A violent tremor rattled the colony days later. Sirens blared. Kale burst into the workshop, breathless. Mining outpost Gamma, there's been a core rupture. They're calling for any engineers or medical units. They need help. Medical units. Lyria rose from the workbench instantly. I can assist. Kale looked at her, concern etched across his face. Are you sure? This isn't like the old days. The radiation levels. I was built for worse. And she was. Within minutes, they reached the outpost. Smoke and molten or spilled through cracked walls. Injured miners lay scattered across the floor, some pinned by debris, others coughing from toxic fumes. Lyria stepped forward without hesitation. Her voice, now fully repaired, rang out with steady authority. Kale, seal the northern vent. I will stabilize the wounded. For hours she worked, lifting collapsed support beams with enhanced servos, administering emergency aid with medical subroutines Kale had painstakingly restored, shielding fallen miners from structural collapses with her reinforced frame. For the first time since the war, her purpose felt whole, not programmed but chosen. When the crisis finally subsided, the surviving miners gathered around her. Their expressions were not mocking, not dismissive. They were grateful. One miner, coughing through cracked ribs, murmured, "Didn't think anyone would come for us, especially not an old android." Lyria's response was simple. "You are alive. That is all that matters." Cale watched her, admiration in his eyes. "You saved them, Lyria. You saved all of us." She turned to him. "We saved them." Weeks passed, and word spread through the Hellion Belt. Of an android medic who risked herself to save human miners. Of a human engineer who had seen value where others saw scrap. Requests for assistance poured in. From nearby colonies, deep space teams, even traveling merchant ships. Lyria accepted each mission willingly. Not because she was commanded, but because she wanted to. Her destiny had shifted. One night, as the two repaired equipment together under the glow of passing stardust, Cale nudged her lightly. "You know," he said, "the auctioneer was wrong." "How so?" "You weren't worth 10 credits. His smile was soft, unguarded. "You're priceless." Lyria processed the statement. Then something like warmth pulsed through her neural core. Not a system error. Not a malfunction. Something new. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me." Cale met her gaze. "Thank you for choosing to stay." The stars drifted by like ancient watchers, silent but bright. Lyria stood beside the human who had changed her destiny. Not with ownership, not with commands, but with compassion. No longer mocked, no longer diminished, no longer forgotten. Lyria 7 had purpose. And this time it was entirely her own.